hope you're fantastic. My name is Gavin Wagamkabela. Hey man, this song. Yes man. But anyway, I hope that you are warm wherever that you are, depending where you are. It's very, very cold, but I hope that you are nice and warm and great, which is very, very important. Anyway, I just wanted to have a tiny little bit of discussion around the issue of entities, especially when you are buying property, especially when you are buying to let. So meaning that you are buying this property to make it a business. So you are going to have a tenant and the tenant is going to pay you rent. So there's always this confusion at times in terms of which entity do you use to buy these properties. Now, there are three main entities that we normally use to buy properties, right? So we either buy in your name, so your natural state, so buying under Gavin, or buying in a company, which is a PTY normally, or buying in a trust. Now, when it comes to trust, there are two main trusts that we normally talk about. One is the testamentary trust, and then the other one is the inter vivos trust. So the testamentary trust is the one that you normally, it kicks in when you pass away. So this speaks to, especially when you have dependents, like your children, obviously, and maybe your children are still young. And the question is, when I pass away, what happens to the financial, what happens to the finances when it comes to my children. So that's where now I would normally advise, but again, you can speak to a financial advisor, or you can speak to us, and then we can be able to hook you up with the financial advisor that is within under our umbrella. So now that's then, it helps on the basis, to give you a peace of mind, in a sense that I know that when I pass away, my kids will be taken care of. So that testamentary trust will have trustees, people that will make sure that, they handle my finances accordingly on behalf of my children. And then there is the inter vivos trust. So the inter vivos trust it's an entity by itself that now can be able to buy assets, or can store assets, which is very, very, very important. Now when it comes to buying the actual properties, you normally look at those three entities. But of course, the biggest thing that drives that, number one, is the issue of tax. Number two is the issue of risk that is attached to your creditors. And the last one being your personal estate. Now, when we come to tax, remember that when you're buying, especially from an investment perspective, you are going to get income from these properties, which means that now the more income you get, especially when you start making these profits, the more now your tax obligation goes up. So meaning that your taxable income will go up. So you can imagine now, the more you get income, the more your tax obligation goes up, your taxable income goes up. And then of course, depending where you are, we are in South Africa, we have a progression tax system, which means that the more you earn, the more you get taxed, which then moves from anything between 18% to 45%. So we look at that. So that's number one. Number two, we look at the risk that is attached to creditors. Now something goes wrong, you have now a creditor that now wants to, they want their money that you owe them legally, and they can basically then end up attaching those properties. And then the last one is the issue of the estate. So this is obviously, we're looking at issues of divorce, depending on how you are married, and we're also looking at the issue of death. So when you now pass away. Now, especially when it comes to the issue of death, I always say, remember that Gavin is an entity. You are an entity. That entity is going to pass away, and unfortunately, you are going to die at some point. Now, that entity then ceases to exist when you die, and that means now that whatever that I own, whatever that I owe, let's actually concentrate on the owning part. Whatever that I owned will now need to then move from my name into somebody else's name, being it my spouse, being it my children. So whoever now is a beneficiary to my estate, so those assets will then move to them. Now remember, now especially when it comes to property, now when it moves, it means that it needs to be transferred from my name into my beneficiary's name. Now that, you know, it's not going to be now transferred on the value in which I bought it under. I hope that's the proper English. So if I bought these properties for 1 million and when I pass away the value is now 9 million, they're not gonna now, the movement aspect of it, the transferring aspect of it is not going to be based on 1 million. It's going to be based on 9 million. So meaning that there is now capital appreciation that has now transpired within my portfolio. So now meaning that there has been now an 8 million appreciation in terms of value. Now obviously that will then be subjected to capital gains tax. So that now becomes very, very important. So you can imagine that the capital gains tax can now apply anything from 13% up to 18%. So we need to be very careful when we now putting together these property portfolios, and that is why it's very important that you have people that understand what they're doing. Get somebody that can advise you accordingly, people like us. All right, cool. So there are a number of things that happens when now you know, we call it the winding up of the estate. So number one, they are executors, so people that are in charge of your will. So those people normally at times you hear they say wills are for free. No. No. So it might be free when you are alive, depending on what is the setup around your will, but normally there might be an issue that you know, it's free now, but the executor will charge your estate when you have passed away. So that's very, very important. And now the executor can charge you know, anything up to 4.025% on the gross value of the estate. So that's very, very important to understand. Okay, and then there is estate duty, right? There might be estate duty. Estate duty is now tax that kicks in when you now have assets that are valued over 3.5 million. So anything that is valued over 3.5 million, it's going to be taxed at 20%. And then of course the capital gains tax, or possible capital gains tax, I've covered that. So those things are very, very important. So that is why now we also look at the issues of, okay, can I buy now in a company because the tax in the company is 28%, and of course from a protection perspective, I'm then protected in terms of my estate. I'm protected in terms of now you know, from a creditor point of view, depending on how you have structured things, the agreements that you have with your creditor. And then the last one is the issue of the trust, to say that, okay, if I put it in a trust, will that be okay? Because again, maybe the tax issue aspect of it in a trust is 45%, but I still get the protection that the trust brings, because the beauty about the trust is that the interviewer's trust is that it's totally independent from you as an entity. So whatever that is owned by the trust does not form part of your personal estate. So that now becomes very, very important. But that's why we also look at other aspects as well, in terms of maybe buying in a company which is owned by the trust. Because when that happens, it means that from a tax point of view, I'm taxed within the company, which is the PTY, but then I still get the protection that the trust brings, you know? So those are the things that you definitely look at. But the driver really around these entities and what to use is the tax, is now the protection against the creditors, and the last one being your personal estate. But you also need to be very careful in terms of the trust for me doesn't apply to everything in terms of situation, because if, like for example, let's say you flip this property, you are buying it so that you can sell it very quickly. For me, then putting it in a trust might not be a very feasible kind of approach. right? And even buying in a company might not be a feasible approach. Things like buying your primary home. So you do have a portfolio, but your primary home, do you buy it in a company, to buy in a trust? Normally the question is, are you gonna keep the house forever or for the longest of time? Because what happens at times is that you're buying this primary home, the house that you live in, but now the issue is that you buy a bigger home because of the kids, and then the kids end up leaving the house. And then when now the kids leave the house is now big, or now we want to retire, and we want to then, we might get to a point where we want to use the proceeds of this house to then buy our beach home in Camps Bay. So those things then become very, very important. All right. So that is why it's absolutely very critical to make sure that you do you consult first whenever you're buying investment property, you're starting your property investment portfolio. So please make sure that you do consult. So the details, I'm gonna leave the details there. That's what we do at GavShaw International. We're able to advise you from that perspective, and we do have financial planners, we do have conveyancers, we do have accountants, so we have everybody under one roof. So please don't be shy to then give us a call or send us an email for us now to schedule a free consultation to then assist you with such things. Please, very, very important. Anyway, I hope that you have an amazing and incredible day. Gavin Mkhabela signing out. See you on the flip side.